I am the Executive Director at the New Jersey Council on Developmental Disabilities. Let me start by thanking Senator Bucco of the 25th Legislative District for his commitment as co-chair of the New Jersey Legislative Disability Caucus and for taking the lead in this afternoon's meeting on housing access for people with disabilities. I'd like to also thank and welcome the other co-chairs and their staff, Senate Majority Leader Ruiz, Majority Leader Assemblyman Greenwald, and Assemblywoman Dunn. Thank you for your co-chair leadership of this caucus. Thanks also goes out to all Senate and Assembly members of the caucus. I think I see Senator Durr's office, Senator Zwicker, I think I saw come on, Senator Corrado, Senator Gopal, Julian Haag at the Senate Republican office, Assemblyman Varelli, Aylin Brennan from the Senate Democratic office. I think I've got everybody that I saw come in, but now my screen looks a little different. So if I didn't get a shout out to you, please put your name in the chat or unmute and just say hello to us. Want to appreciate all your time. We have a very busy day in our state today with hearings, budget testimony, some conferences, and other events. So if anyone is not able to join us, we do have a recording. Like all sessions have been recorded, and in the chat you will find a link to a dedicated web page where you can listen in on today's session, share it with others, and participate by going to our web page and registering for future events, sending in comments, finding supporting organizations who are always ready and available to support members of the legislature in education and information that is important to their constituents and to you all. Closed captioning and sign language interpreters are available today, and the session, as I said, is being recorded. Panelists, if you could just stay on mute until it's your time to talk, that would help in having good audio feed. And so just to recap, the Disability Caucus serves as a bipartisan forum within the New Jersey Legislature for lawmakers and their staff to consider the impact on the disability community when they are looking at and shaping all public policies. We know that this can be accomplished through increased awareness and a greater understanding of the many complexities of the service systems and the issues impacting individuals with disabilities and their families. People with disabilities, their families, and the organizations that serve, support, and advocate for them serve as a resource to the council by providing information and insight into the disability community. We are thrilled that we hosted the first legislative staff briefing session this past Friday, and I think some of you are joining us today, so thank you. Thanks to Volunteers of America in Collingswood. They hosted the site for the last Friday session. It was a briefing session where Assemblyman Greenwald was actually able to join us with a few of his staff. They helped kick off the session with a terrific discussion. Thanks to Peg Kinsel at SPAN Parent Advocacy for moderating that session, and about a dozen legislative staff who were in attendance. There are 2 more briefing sessions that will take place with legislative staff, one this Friday, April 28th, in Livingston at the Way Center, and then another session in Ewing on Friday, May 5th, at the New Jersey Association of Community Providers office. So we hope to see more legislative staff at these next 2 briefing sessions. If you need a copy of those meetings and the logistics, please just reach out to us. So drop something in the chat or email us, and we'll be happy to get you that information. So we come together today for a second round discussion on housing. And we are very pleased, again, to have the leadership and support of Senator Bucco, who will lead today's discussion. Senator Bucco.
Thank you, Mercedes. It's great to be here. It is certainly an honor for me to serve as one of the co-chairs of the Legislative Disability Caucus, along with my fellow co-chairs, Senate Majority Leader Teresa Ruiz, Assembly Majority Leader Lou Greenwald, and Assemblywoman Ora Dunn, and all the other legislators that make up the caucus. You know, we have a bright and compassionate caucus, and I am so thrilled to be a part of that and to serve as one of the co-chairs. You know, today it gives me a great pleasure to lead this important roundtable discussion on the importance of housing availability for people with disabilities in New Jersey. The challenges for people with disabilities to secure affordable and accessible housing remains ongoing. And as we know, where a person lives has such an enormous impact in determining their employment opportunities, housing prices, and mobility. Furthermore, we know that people with disabilities experience poverty at higher rates than people without disabilities. As a result, people with disabilities often struggle to secure quality housing and other necessities without additional housing assistance, which is why, despite some progress that's being made on the federal and state levels, we must continue to work together to ensure that our vulnerable residents throughout the disabled community have the ability to overcome any obstacle that prevents them from accessing housing they can afford. As I am sure we all agree, access to housing is a basic human need. However, with that being said, among the challenges municipalities face in providing housing for people with disabilities is a lack of resources to support housing development. These challenges aren't unique to housing for people with disabilities, but they have made it difficult to increase our affordable housing stock in New Jersey overall. The fact remains, when we force towns to develop in areas that are not ideal for affordable housing, especially for the disabled, we prevent municipalities from being able to ensure that new residents have the service and support they need. And as a result, the housing is often never built. I know there have been some concerns expressed about a bill I recently introduced to delay the fourth round of affordable housing obligations, S 3739. But I want to reassure you that providing accessible housing for people with disabilities remains a priority for me. Nevertheless, I believe this must be done in a sustainable way. I think we all agree that our current system is simply not working. We continue to see large deficits in affordable housing statewide, especially in the area of our disabled community. We cannot expect to continue to do the same thing over and over again and expect a different result. That is the definition of insanity. It's also worth noting that delaying implementation of the fourth round rules does not mean that affordable housing will stop being built. Instead, as municipalities continue working towards meeting their third round obligations, they will have time to regroup after a long, unpredictable gap period and ensure that going forward, housing development can be accomplished in a way that is responsible and provides the greatest benefit to the largest number of people. As I've mentioned on this caucus before, I also sponsor a bill that I believe will provide groundbreaking relief for people with disabilities. The bill would incentivize the development of housing for people with disabilities by offering municipalities double credit for each affordable unit built. That bill is S 1751. In addition, I also sponsor a bill that would provide property tax credits for people with disabilities. Both of these bills, if passed, would go a long way towards making housing more affordable for this vulnerable population and would allow municipalities to take a more measured approach in this area. We know we have a long way to go, but today's roundtable discussion will help us focus on what we need to concentrate on in getting us across the finish line. I look forward to an informative discussion today from the talented panel we have assembled. So Mercedes, let's get it started.
Thank you, Senator Bucco. We can assure you that the 1 in 4 New Jerseyans in our state that identify with having a disability and their families are really grateful for having this conversation today. And we talked last year when we had a topic on housing that housing would resurface, and sure enough, it has, because it is such a vital and critical issue in the lives of people with disabilities and their families. We know that where we live really sets the stage for so many other aspects of our life, like where we work, what we do during the day. It influences how we develop natural supports, and how much we pay for housing really sets then the pace for how much we have available for the rest of our living expenses. So affordable, available, accessible housing, call it the AAAs of housing, has an overall direct impact on our lives, on our health, on our safety, and our security. And we know that research has demonstrated that stable housing has been found to improve health outcomes with that direct correlation, and therefore a decrease in healthcare costs overall. So I'm delighted that we're continuing this conversation today, because while we've done a great deal in New Jersey, Senator Bucco, you've laid out additional things that we can do, and there is even additional work to do beyond. So the topic of housing was brought up yesterday at a national disability policy seminar that I attended, and I listened to Sandra Connolly, a nationally recognized Black woman with disabilities. She talked about the need to decrease barriers, something that you've said, Senator Bucco, and the impact that housing has on people's life. She especially focused on those that are marginalized in society, our unserved and underserved communities. And she advocated for streamlining the process, the application process, the search process. As she was speaking, I was thinking about how people with disabilities have to become part of a lottery to obtain housing resources. And think about that, a lottery. Typically, a lottery is a contest where players buy a ticket and have a random and often low chance of winning. So with kind of all due respect, we must create a system that works, not one that we have to hit the lottery to win. So let's start this conversation. And before I introduce our first panel member, let me welcome Assemblyman Paul Moriarty, the newest member of our caucus. Assemblyman, your staff joined our legislative briefing session last week, and we are very proud that you have joined the caucus. We also have Assemblyman Omba on the call today. David Galpern and Cora present from the Assembly Majority Leader Office. So thank you. Oh boy, we have more folks who've joined. Assemblywoman Murphy's here. Her office is being represented. So great to have you all with us today. So you're all going to get the pleasure of listening to our first panel member speaker, Stacey Berger. Stacey is president and CEO of the Housing and Community Development Network of New Jersey, where she directs this statewide association of over 270 community-based organizations and individuals. The Housing and Community Development Network was created in 1989 to enhance the efforts of these groups to create affordable housing and revitalize the communities. Before becoming the president and CEO, Stacey served as the director of advocacy and policy in that organization. And prior to joining the network, she worked for 9 years with the New Jersey Citizen Action, where she went from being an organizer to the political and legislative director. She received her master's in public affairs and politics from Rutgers University in 2004, and she's achieved numerous professional milestones and honors throughout her career, including being honored by the New Jersey General Assembly during Women's History Month as a change maker in 2016. Stacey has made multiple appearances on national media outlets, including MSNBC, NPR, and the New York Times and Wall Street Journal, and is recognized as an expert on housing and community development issues sought by national, regional, and local press. We're delighted that Stacey could join us today, so I turn to you, Stacey.
Thank you so much, Mercedes. It's an honor to be here and to be among so many friends and colleagues and members of the legislature. It's a great opportunity to discuss how we can all come together to achieve housing as a human right. I really appreciate Senator Bucco's introduction, and I'm glad that we all agree that everyone should have a safe, affordable place to call home in a community of their choice. I do think that we need to do more to make sure that we have those choices for everyone, regardless of their economic circumstance. People's zip code should not determine their future or their economic health and well-being. So I wanted to provide a little bit of background and talk about what we can do as a state and what everyone here can do to help lift up the need to make sure everyone has a safe, affordable place to call home. So New Jersey has a deep housing affordability crisis. It harms people with the lowest incomes the most. I don't need to tell folks on this call or Zoom rather that people with disabilities are often unable to earn the wages that they want. And as a result, they have a very difficult time accessing safe, stable, and affordable homes. I spend a large portion of my time trying to facilitate making sure that people have access to the resources that they need to live safely and stably where they want. New Jersey has done a lot to address our housing crisis, but we simply need to do a lot more. Some background, and if folks want to put answers to these quick questions in the chat, feel more than welcome. About a third of New Jersey residents rent their homes, and because renting is often more affordable than owning, people with disabilities are especially vulnerable to high rental costs and the lack of universal rental vouchers. Some quick questions. Where in the United States can a person with a disability living on SSI find an affordable apartment? Nowhere. There is not a single county in the United States in which a person living on SSI with a disability can afford an efficient, what is considered an efficiency apartment, a 1 or 2 bedroom. How much would a person in New Jersey have to pay for their monthly income to rent a 1-bedroom apartment? New Jersey is one of the most expensive places in the country to rent. We routinely wind up at the top of the Out of Reach report. Many of you who are members of the network or partners of the network know that we put out that report with our national partners at the National Low Income Housing Coalition. We consistently find that people earning minimum wage have to work somewhere between 115 and 125 hours a week to be able to afford a 1-bedroom or 2-bedroom apartment, depending on where they live. And last but not least, what percentage of folks are eligible for a rental voucher who actually receive them? I mean, this, I think, is a statistic that shocks a lot of people. Only 25% of families that need a housing voucher in the United States gets one. Unlike food stamps or WIC or TANF, other social service programs that many of us are familiar with, housing is not considered a right under the federal or state government. Only 25%, 1 in 4 families that need a rental voucher get one. And it is crazy to think of it, as Mercedes noted, as a lottery. We used to talk about the Hunger Games, but I like to talk about the housing games. It is an unfair and uncivil way to treat people who simply don't have the resources to afford our out of control rental market. According to the Technical Assistance Collaborative, a national organization that's focused on housing for people with disabilities, there is simply no place in our nation, and there's no place in New Jersey where people can afford to live if they're living on SSI. There simply is not, the housing market just does not address that need the way that it is. We treat housing like a commodity. The vast majority of our housing delivery system is designed to make a profit and not necessarily to take care of people. The main source of funding for housing development nationally has been the low-income housing tax credit, or what we call LIHTC. And here in New Jersey, we've had a fund formerly known as Balanced Housing, which was renamed the Affordable Housing Trust Fund in 2008. And that fund, as many of you know, is capitalized by a portion of the New Jersey Realty transfer fee. It is the only state source of subsidy for nonprofit developers. There's also the support of a Special Needs Housing Trust Fund, which received a small increase last year due to the advocacy of many of the folks here on this Zoom, including, I think I saw Diane Riley from the Supportive Housing Association, who did a tremendous job to increase funding for the Special Needs Housing Trust Fund. I want to just note that while governors of both political parties have taken funding from the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, there was a period of 8 years where Chris Christie raised that drain of the trust fund to an art form from a very small amount under former Governor Corzine to Governor Christie taking about $1 billion out of the housing market and reducing our ability to spend on the creation of homes. So when we talk about why we don't have the homes we need, we really need to look at where the resources went and why we didn't have them for almost a decade. At the same time that Governor Christie took those funds, he and other folks made creating more affordable homes in the legal fashion that we have much more difficult by trying to gut the regulatory oversight process, also known as the Council on Affordable Housing, or COA. While imperfect, certainly, COA represents a leap, or did anyway represent a leap of really public policy that is not found anywhere else in the nation. New Jersey is the only state in our union that requires towns to make a reasonable effort to provide homes for lower income people. Simply put, towns are not allowed to use their zoning powers to exclude folks based on the kinds of homes that they need. You may have heard, as the senator noted, that we are still in the third round of COA. And after many years and many lawsuits and many attempts to stall this process, we are finally making progress. So we feel here at the network that it would be inappropriate to put a pause on that while we are starting to make that kind of progress. Honestly, I have brought a person into the world and am sending him to college this fall in the time it has taken the state of New Jersey to move from the beginning of the third round to what we hope will be the end of the third round and the beginning of the fourth round in 2025. We are on the precipice of significant development that can really increase the share of affordable homes available and affordable to the people who everybody on this call serves. It would be an injustice to put a pin in that and to ask communities to wait, or ask those people to wait. People need homes. We spend just a huge amount of our time fielding calls and emails, as so many of you do, about where people can find a place to live. There just simply aren't enough homes. And to suggest at this point, when we are at a critical moment, that we should stop that is really a mind-blowing suggestion. I was shocked to see that legislation, Senator, and I hope that we can have a conversation about how to make sure that that does not move forward in the way that it's originally proposed, because it would do a lot of harm to a lot of people who need a safe, affordable place to live. People are suffering tremendously from the pandemic price gouging. We are seeing huge rate increases in rent, even though New Jersey has a law preventing unconscionable rent increases. There's no definition of what unconscionable constitutes. I think anything over the rate of inflation is certainly subject to that definition. I know I have a friend who's a single mom and a teacher with a disability, and she is working very hard to make sure that she can provide for her children. And even with a full income, her rent went up 20% for no change, just because the landlord could do that. That's no way to run a state, and no way to treat our fellow citizens. We know that the rental market is exacerbated by the systemic and institutional racism that people face. And we know that in New Jersey, our homeless population is overrepresented by people of color. It simply is a function of the way that our housing market has developed over decades. We can do better and we must do better. New Jersey's renters are far more likely to be Black or brown residents, as we have the worst racial wealth gap in our country. Our friends at the New Jersey Institute for Social Justice found that the median net worth for New Jersey's white families is about $322,000, which is the highest in the nation. But the median net worth for New Jersey's Latino and Black families is just $26,000 and $17,000 respectively. I'm going to say that again. New Jersey's white families have a median net worth of $322,000. The net worth of our Latino families is $26,000. And for Black families, that median net worth is just $17,000. As I said, people of color are significantly overrepresented in our homeless population, according to last year's the 2022 point in time count. It's so important to know that we're the only state in the country that enforces the Mount Laurel decisions, that requires communities to provide a reasonable opportunity for people to have a safe, affordable place to live. That decision, the Mount Laurel decision and the Fair Housing Act that has supported it, and all of the legal cases that have come since then, are really the underpinning of what makes it possible for social service providers, nonprofit housing developers, and disability advocates to access the housing that people need. We are making sure that everyone has a safe, affordable place that they can afford by creating affordable rental and homeownership opportunities. We're doing this by deploying the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, which is finally capitalized and has not been drained under this administration in any meaningful way. We have other investments, including those that are negotiated as part of Community Reinvestment Act agreements, which provide low-cost, below-market mortgage products to support for homeowners and to support revitalized neighborhoods in both new and rehabilitated homes. New Jersey has just started to make large investments, including with our ARP funds, into the creation of homes that people need in the places they want to live, including last year's new Affordable Housing Production Fund to jumpstart some of the developments that have been stalled under the Mount Laurel decisions, including $305 million in the affordable in ARP funds that were dedicated to the HPF. We're also piloting a first generation homeownership program to address that racial wealth gap. And the state is just recently reopened and then closed quickly because of the demand, the Section 8 Housing Choice Program. We've also received probably at this point close to $1 billion in emergency rental assistance funding through the ARP and other COVID programs. We just last week got another $31 million. That's going to make sure that people who have a safe, affordable place to live can stay there through those Emergency Rental Act funds. And last but not least, we have a whole political and policy platform called House New Jersey, which many of the legislators on this call have been very supportive of, and we appreciate that. That is about $900 million, just shy of $1 billion, in funding that we think can help solve the housing crisis. We're about halfway there after last year's budget, but we know that we need to do more. The federal government has to play a role, local government has to play a role, but the state government really needs to stay in the game and make sure that people have the resources to build and create and preserve affordable homes and to access them, most especially for people at our lowest income, which, as I said before, I don't have to tell you all, really disproportionately impacts people with disabilities. So I want to thank the council for having me here today. I'm happy to take questions when that's part of the discussion. I think most folks here know how to reach me, but I'm happy to share my contact info if there are questions or other ways that we can be of help in this effort together. Thanks, Mercedes.
Thank you, Stacy. Thank you for all your hard work, your dedication, your insights, your leadership, for describing this maze that exists in the housing arena. And as I try to follow it, and I'm sure many members on this call try to follow it, I think about how overwhelming the housing maze is for so many individuals with disabilities and their families who are just struggling to get through each day, let alone have a clear understanding of all that's involved in accessing housing. So I also put out there that we need to have a meaningful way and a way that can reach individuals and families to understand the housing resources that are available, because it's overwhelming, to say the least. So thank you. Next up, I would like to introduce Tom Taranto. Tom, I'm so grateful, is joining us today as a leader and an advocate who has made tremendous contributions throughout his career for access to housing. Tom is the president of the Bergen County United Way since 2005, and he has 41 years of experience working for local United Ways in Bergen, in Burlington, and in Hudson counties. Since 2005, Tom has led Bergen County's United Way efforts to build homes and that can afford partnership with Madeline Housing Partners as co-manager of the Bergen County United Way Madeline Housing Partners LLC. This partnership has constructed 36 projects, I believe, Tom, providing affordable housing to over 500 individuals with special needs, families, seniors, and veterans, and another 26 projects in the organization's pre-development pipeline. Tom is a board member of the NJ 211 partnership, driving implementation of 211 helpline on behalf of New Jersey's local United Ways and New Jersey state government. And he serves on the Supported Housing Association of the New Jersey's Investors Council. So Tom, I know that you're also locally active in your community, the Leonia governing body, the Leonia Library Board, and chair of the town's planning board. Tom, thank you for being with us and sharing your expertise with us today.
My pleasure, Mercedes. It's great to be here. Welcome. Welcome to all on the Zoom. Mercedes gave a excellent rundown of of our background. We've been quite busy. I would say that we have a particular passion and an inspiration for building supportive housing. In fact, I would say that there's more acceptance now and agreement now among municipalities to build supportive housing than there's ever been before. That's the great news. And I think, Mercedes, we can probably pop up just a couple of examples of this on the screen to show folks some of the projects that are site plan approved and that we're about to start construction. I think first up, this is a project that actually uses 9% low-income housing tax credits. It's a 26-unit, 3-story affordable project in the downtown of South Orange. What's kind of neat about this project is it's a mix of population. 16 of the units in this building will be supportive housing apartments. And then there will be an additional affordable 10 family units. And this project is located right in the downtown of South Orange. So what that means is easy, walkable access to transportation, to recreation, to employment opportunities, just all the amenities that downtown living in South Orange has to offer. What's interesting about this project as well is that we were able to make the pro forma work because it is on land that is being conveyed to us at nominal cost, basically for $1, by the village of South Orange. The next project I want to show you is in Waldwick, New Jersey. And this is an interesting, these are actually 2 4-bedroom group homes that are joined together by a breezeway. And it's designed to serve folks with autism, which is, as you know, a prevalent diagnosis here in New Jersey. What's interesting about this particular site, and I'll underscore this a little bit later, is that we, in contrast to South Orange, where the land was donated, we actually bought this site. It was on the open real estate market. We felt it was such a great location, also proximate to the downtown of Waldwick, that we felt a compelling need to redevelop this site as supportive housing in full collaboration and partnership with the municipality. But Waldwick had no available municipal land that we could build on. And we sought to build or sought this property on the open market because we thought it was such a great location. And I also wanted to pop up these pictures to give you a sense of why I think we've been successful and have had such great breakthroughs with municipalities, which is that we build a very durable, high quality project using hardy board and high series Anderson windows. We design to fit the aesthetic of the neighborhoods that we build in. We own and operate these projects for the long term. So we really strive to be good neighbors with the municipalities that we build in. And to that point, we've been invited back in many of the towns that we have built in to build again. That's the good news. The not so good news, I would say, is that, we're one of the few developers that will build a smaller project, say 10, 12, 15, 20 units, which is kind of the size that municipalities seeking to fulfill their affordable housing obligations. It's the size of property sometimes that they have to convey. That unit count or density lends to that size of property that they have to convey. And it is the precise size of project that is economically not feasible for many of the market rate developers. And it's also a project that requires, some subsidy. As mentioned with Waldwick, where we bought that piece of property, while we're able to cobble together the so-called capital stack pretty effectively, we fundamentally subsidize every project that we build with our own capital, and that capital is drawn from philanthropic contributions. So while there's a considerable amount of capital available, as Stacy underscored right now, to finance construction, what there isn't a lot of are pre-development expense subsidies. That's the work that's required for engineering, the environmental reviews, the architectural concepts, all to get to a site plan application in order to then be eligible to get construction financing. And that's where the resources are pretty spare. So on the one hand, you have municipalities that are interested and desirous of building all kinds of affordable housing, but particularly now supportive housing. And you have construction financing that's available, but the third leg of the stool, which is that pre-development expense help, simply isn't there to get projects across the finish line. So I think one of the areas of exploration for the committee might be how to provide resources that would help municipalities, help affordable housing developers who are operating in that project range of 10, 12, 15, 20 units, the unit size that fits very well with many municipalities, to somehow provide some wherewithal in order to stimulate additional development to capitalize on the desire of many of the municipalities to build at this time. So I'll stop there and be happy to answer any questions as the session progresses.
Thank you, Tom. I see Assemblywoman Dunn, one of our co-chairs of the caucus, and Assemblyman Clinton Calabrese have also joined. I'm not sure if I've missed anybody, but I would like to take a moment to ask members of our legislative caucus to unmute and ask these two terrific speakers any questions or to weigh in on this conversation today.
Mercedes, this is Senator Bucco. I just wanted to address a couple of things that Stacy talked about and moving the project forward. I think it's important that the folks on the call understand how the affordable housing process in New Jersey works. A number is developed as to the regional need for a particular area in the state of where affordable housing should be developed. And that regional number is then divided up between the municipalities based on land mass, etc. Once that number is assigned, then the municipalities have to go out and put together a plan as to where they can develop affordable housing to meet that need. Now, if a private developer is doing it routinely for the development purposes, 20% anywhere between 10 and 20% set aside for affordable housing is been what the numbers have been. So in other words, if you develop 100 units, there'll be anywhere between 10 and 20 units, affordable units built in that particular development. And then if they can't reach an agreement with fair share housing, et cetera, then the matter moves to court and master is assigned. And eventually through the court process, it either gets tried or it gets settled. But the fact of the matter is that once a plan is approved, that doesn't guarantee that development is built. It just recognizes sites as a spot for affordable housing to meet the need that's been assigned for that particular municipality. Again, I'm talking about this in its simplest forms. But the problem develops that there's no land use planning that goes into this, right? We're not considering infrastructure. We're not considering the ability for folks to be able to get to jobs, transportation. All of those things are critically important, especially for the disabled community. And that's why I believe that we've seen a lack of development. That's why over the years, we're still far behind actual brick and mortar of affordable housing being built, because number one, developers want to make profit. So they're not going to build these homes if they don't think they can make a profit on it. And folks aren't going to gravitate towards these affordable homes if they're not in an area in which they feel they can live and achieve their goals. So, you know, when we talk about just continuing to blindly move forward, I think we're making a mistake here, because as Tom indicated, his development in Orange is a great success. Why? Because he talked about being able to get to mass transit, being able to get to downtown, to jobs, to shop. That is a home run for the folks that need affordable housing. Now, I'm not saying we throw the entire thing out, but certainly continuing to keep this process in the courts versus back to a council on affordable housing and correcting some of these things so that the housing is developed in the areas in which there is a need is critically important. And right now, we do not do that in New Jersey. So continuing to just blindly follow the process that we followed will continue to result in a lack of affordable housing actually being built, and affordable housing that folks that are disabled will be able to utilize comfortably. And that's my concern. And I think it's something that folks that develop affordable housing will tell you is important.
So, Senator, I'm going to give Stacy an opportunity to comment.
Absolutely.
Oh,
Stacey.
thank you, Mercedes, and thank you, Senator. I think we probably can have an offline conversation. I don't want to get in, I don't want to take up all the oxygen in a back and forth, but a couple of other important points to note. One, the League of Municipalities vociferously advocated for the end of the Council on Affordable Housing and wanted things to go to the court, and then got what they wanted and didn't want that either. There were numerous lawsuits, including one that I believe Shaw was involved in responding to along with the network, where folks who are on SSI or have a limited income and because of a disability were deemed by some of these towns to be too low income to be able to afford to live there, and were excluded from the count that the municipalities wanted. So in a lot of places, people are trying to have it both ways. And that's really, I think, the core of the issue. We can't say we should do all of these things to make sure that people have a safe, affordable place to call home, and then say, well, we shouldn't do what we know has worked in the past. The Council on Affordable Housing and New Jersey's Mount Laurel laws were working very, very well for the first 2 rounds. There were very few complaints. The major complaint started in 2008 when the network Fair Share Housing and hundreds of allies led an effort to eliminate the ability of towns to trade or sell a portion of their responsibility, which was formerly called the Regional Contribution Agreement, so that primarily whiter and wealthier towns traded off their responsibility and provided a way for provided them a way to not have to do those homes by paying other municipalities to take that responsibility. And once that valve was no longer available to some of those communities, they started to complain about the Mount Laurel process. So it's not that homes have not been built because the process has been working and there's been a lot of money and enthusiasm and political leadership and political will. It's because there's been exactly the opposite. In the 2 rounds where there was funding and there was political will and leadership, there were thousands and tens of thousands of homes built that made it possible for people with disabilities to live near their families and where they wanted to work if they were able to get employment. That is not something that is happening now, and it hasn't happened, as I said, for almost 2 decades. When I started at the network in 2005 as a new mom with a newborn, we were still talking about the 3rd round rules. We are still talking about the 3rd round rules now, and we are in the process of implementing them. So not increasing barriers to the process and not putting a pause on the process right now is actually the responsible and thoughtful thing to do so that we're able to build the homes that communities are supposed to be providing the opportunity for nonprofit and for-profit developers. The inclusionary zoning piece that you mentioned, Senator, the 15 or 20% set aside, that's only for developments that are being done by for-profit developers. There are also LIHTC developments that are 100% affordable, so every unit is affordable. And then there's the kinds of homes that Tom and other members of ours, like Tom, are building around the state that are 100% affordable. So there's a mix and a match of the kinds of homes that are available to people, and we need to make sure that that variety continues. The only way that we get here,
those 100% developments are few and far between because there's not the resources out there for developers to come in and build them. Tom mentioned that during part of his conversation.
I understand that, and that's why the 305 million that the governor just put in.
I understand. We'll have to agree to disagree because I think that we are not getting the homes built that should be built, or
because the money wasn't there, and people have sued for the last almost 20 years to stop the money and to stop the development.
The state did not take.
Stacey and Senator, if I
see what's what.
The state did not take. Just let me finish. Wait, one last thing. The state did not take the money away from the municipalities. Their affordable housing trust funds were never touched.
But you took the
Stacey, if I could just jump in. This is Assemblyman Umba. So I come from a different background currently and prior to being in the Assembly. I'm also a local business administrator by my day job for the last 10 years. So I deal with municipalities that deal with this. I think to the biggest point that I see as a business administrator, and now I've successfully built a 100% affordable housing unit in Lumberton Township, where I was the business administrator for 6 years. And that was primarily only due to the fact that we were able to successfully get federal HUD credits, working with the Walters Group, which is a very recognizable group. Tom probably knows them. They're very recognizable around the state with building affordable housing units. And I think that's the key, is to be able to get that information out there. But when you talk about those rounds, those funding sources that we get from the federal government to support those 100% affordable units, we're talking about 1 to 8. It's so competitive to get those resources, and I think that's a big issue, and that's an issue that we face here in New Jersey. We don't get the return on investment, the dollars and cents that we send to DC to get back. But it's a highly competitive market, and we were able to do it. We were actually ranked number 2 out of the, I think, 6 that were issued out. I think it was in 2017 or 2018.
So I think those are items that we also need to help with and educate business administrators in towns of the resources that are out there. We did it in partnership with a developer too. The developer bought 170 acres. Half of that had to be preserved open space as part of the deal. 7 acres was bought by the town. $715,000 that we had in our COA fund was used to purchase that property. Very accessible to Route 38, a state highway, very accessible to public transportation and busing for people. And then also they had a 15% obligation in their area. And we were actually able to solve 3/4 of our affordable housing obligation for the third round in that town by going that route. But I think a lot of it is us advocating with our federal legislators to make sure we're the most densely populated state. If you look at the dollars and cents that go out for these 100% affordable units from the federal government, we are disproportionately not getting our fair share. And we're not getting those projects approved by the federal HUD. But I think that's also very important to point out. I think we can argue on both sides. Clearly, both sides have some blames here, but I come at it as let's solve the problem. Let's get affordable housing out there. Let's focus on finding the resources in order to do that and give the resources to those towns so they can do it. I clearly hear you when you say the League of Municipalities fought it, and we've kind of been in limbo, but there are success stories happening around the state to provide these. And I think Tom showed that, but I think there needs to be some more focuses on trying to get those federal dollars in, and it shouldn't be so competitive that we're only getting 8 projects. We were the number 2 project in that round, and we were providing 70 units. That was it. So, 70 units in Burlington County in a small town, where there's still sewer serviceability there is a hard thing as well. So that's the only thing that I would put in. A lot of it is an educational side of it to know where the resources are, but then also get our federal representatives to get us more of those return on investments for us.
Thank you.
Could not agree more, Assemblyman. We spent a large part of the last month in Congress in DC advocating for exactly those additional resources. We are doing that today. Our national president of the National Low Income Housing Coalition will be testifying before Congress tomorrow. We want to make sure that the Housing First model, which has helped a lot of folks who are dealing with homelessness, is not sideswiped as part of this budget negotiation. So absolutely. And I think your story is right on point. You've solved 75% of your obligation in the time you were given. There's a little more time left in that third round. And if there's a municipality that doesn't finish their round, they can roll it into the 4th round. But to be saying we should stop for 4 years when we're starting to finally move the needle, but seems like not the right direction to be.
Stacey, what I will say to Senator Bucco's point, and looking at his bill to push this back a few years, is that the story in Lumberton is that the 100% affordable unit has been built and is now filling out applications and people are moving in. The developer's portion on his side is finally broken ground. And 2 parts, not anything to do with the local municipality. One part was the availability of the regional MUA to approve the amount of units that were going to go into their sewer system. So I feel that we definitely need to work on streamlining those processes. And 2 was because of the economic downturn and because of COVID, ended up causing that developer to have to hit pause for a few years. They were supposed to be done in concert, and that's, I think, coming from a standpoint of COVID, looking at what we saw back in 2008 and how we had to do a pause for a number of developments that we were doing because of the economic downturn, with developers putting out, that I think adding a few more years to the 3rd round will allow towns to try and finish this obligation, because Lumberton, who has 75% of it to basically say, will only have 75% if that developer finishes within the next 2 years. And between the 92 houses and the 300 apartment units that they are building, that will not be done in those 3 years. So it is.
And there's
it is
nothing
a challenge.
stopping, there's nothing stopping Lumberton from going to either the special master or the court and saying, look, we're doing the best we can here. Pandemic, supply chain issues, cost increases. We just need a little more time to get where we need. That's different than saying we're gonna delay the whole thing for 300 plus municipalities when people are desperate for an affordable place to call home in a state with one of the highest rental costs and one of the widest racial wealth gaps that is directly due to our housing market being inaccessible to lower income and people of color. We are close to meeting this moment. We need to push forward. Can we make the system better, more fair? Absolutely. We are happy to sit down with you, with Senator Bucco, with all the members of the legislature in this caucus and help you find the money. Don't pass the corporate business tax cut. There's $1 billion. Let's use that for a state LIHTC program. We can do so much if we do it together, but starting by saying we should be stopping where we are, it just seems to be not what our economy and not what our residents who are desperate for somewhere safe to live need. So I appreciate your hard work on this.
This is a very robust and needed conversation, and I'm glad we're here. We have a few other legislators who've joined, Assemblyman Calabrese, Assemblywoman Chaparro. Just want to make sure that we've heard from any other members of the legislature before we turn back to Senator Bucco for closing remarks. Please unmute if you need to get something on the recording today. Well, again, thank you to Stacy and Tom. Thank you, Assemblyman Umba, and I'm going to turn to Senator Bucco to close us out.
Thank you, Mercedes. This was certainly a lively and informative discussion today. I want to thank everybody that participated. It gives us something to think about and to address some of these areas that need to be addressed. So the housing can ultimately be built, because that's really what the bottom line is, right? We need to have more housing available for those that are disabled. And we need to make sure that we remove the obstacles to getting that done. And I think you've heard from Tom about some great projects, and certainly from Stacy about her feelings on where we should continue to head. We will continue to agree to disagree on whether or not we should take some time to fix the system to make sure that it is working and efficient and providing the housing that it's designed to do. So I want to thank everybody today for participating. I want to thank the co-chairs and all the legislators on for taking the time to listen and learn. And I want to thank you, Mercedes, for all the work that you do in this area. It's certainly God's work. God bless everybody. Thank you.